If I could have your attention just for a moment, please. Sorry to interrupt. And as previously advertised, we have the privilege of having a little talk from Arthur Mullen right here.
Thank you.
He's going to do a little bit on Roger Sherman in the Junior League. Did I get that right?
In the Union League.
In the Union League, not the Junior League. The Union League.
Oh, there's so much history here.
That one glass of wine I had a long time ago. I should be over it by now. Okay, Arthur.
Well, thank you so much. And it's such an honor to be able to speak with you all. I'm such a big fan of what you all do, and I know that you've got the oldest organization of preservation in the country. So just a big thank you to everything that you all do. It's really inspiring to me. I work at the front desk here as a host, and I've become a little bit obsessed with the history of the building and the site, and it's gorgeous. This kind of drew me in, and I prepared a few remarks about that for this evening to kind of show some of the scope of the history of this particular site. And I'll start off by saying that for those who say that eating is a way of bringing the world inside of us, that I would add that the preservation of historic buildings is a way for us to step inside history, helping to explain who we are and from where we have come. In this area of Connecticut was first populated between 10,000 and 7,000 BC, and all the evidence surviving now is stone artifacts, with the first artifacts from New Haven dating to approximately 6,000 BC. No one is 100% sure if those artifacts belong to the Quinnipiacs themselves, but evidence suggests that they were living in this area for centuries before first contact with the Europeans. And the Quinnipiacs who lived in the New Haven area in the 1600s were coastal Algonquins. Quinnipiac is an Algonquin word that means long waterland, and this was also used to describe the future site of New Haven and the principal river of our region here. And since the Quinnipiacs no longer exist as a tribe, many have dismissed their contributions as insignificant, and they almost remain unknown to modern New Haveners. But it's an important part, I think, to consider. On April 24th, 1638, 500 English settlers under the leadership of John Davenport and Theophilus Eaton arrived at the harbor to settle permanently on the lands of the Quinnipiac Indians. And they had been weakened already by the transmission of disease, and they welcomed the English as military allies against the Pequots and Mohawks, amongst others. At that point, there was a treaty that was made between the sachem or chief of the Quinnipiacs and the English settlers, and in this treaty, granted all of the lands and rivers and ponds and trees extending as far east, west, north, and south as the Quinnipiacs were using the land, in exchange for some 24 coats, a dozen each of spoons, hoes, hatchets, bowls, 24 knives and scissors, and that was in exchange for the land that is now New Haven, East Haven, Branford, North Haven, Wallingford, Cheshire, Hamden, Bethany, Woodbridge, and Orange. And this was a deal that was, or a settlement that was brokered by a gentleman that was living in Hartford named Mr. John Stanton. And he was the only person that was able to speak the language of the Quinnipiacs in that day. And it was in exchange for that land, also agreed to that the English would not provide any guns to the Quinnipiacs, and that they would also no longer have the free range to plant and hunt on the lands of the English. And so following in this, well, New Haven was one of the first planned cities in America, and our streets here are laid out on a 4x4 grid called the 9 Square Plan. And this site was one of the very first that was settled by the Puritans. This plot actually appears on the map of 1641, which is one of the earliest recorded maps in the history of New Haven. And it was known as the Richard Platt lot. And Richard Platt was someone that was from about 20 miles east of London in England. And he, and we know this because in April of 1638, he was the son of a tailor, and he disposed of his house and lands in Ware, England, which is where the town he was from, and prepared to move with his family and the other Puritans in the congregation that he belonged to North America, to create the new colony. And so the Platt family arrived in New Haven by approximately August 1639. We know that because on August 22nd, 1639, Richard Platt was one of the first of 66 men who were the formation of a church society in New Haven. And it wasn't probably adventure so much that brought the Platts to this particular plot of land in the 1630s, but more likely it was religious belief and wanting to start a new colony where they were able to control the practice of their faith. So this land has been in residential use for most of its recorded history. It was recorded that by 1641 there was a house, a barn, and orchards on this home lot, and that all belonged to Richard Platt. And it was described as Richard Platt's house plot was on the southwest side of Chapel Street, facing the present grounds of Yale College, and extending in the rear to land allotted to one of the reverends of the group, Peter Prudden. And Peter Prudden actually would take Richard Platt and other colonists with him to Milford, where they were actually forming the town of Milford just 2 years after arriving in New Haven, and after many had built homes and structures here in New Haven, including Richard Platt building a home here. And then the ownership of this property passed from the Platt family when Richard Platt passed away to John Benham, and then to Joseph Benham. And in 1670, this property, approximating 2 acres, was deeded to Samuel Smith for 27 pounds. And then in 1721 to Nathaniel Mix, and then to his son.